Daphne here with Block P. Puff Stitch Check, as its name infers, is a loose blousey stitch. Set beside is a very tight stitch, B stitch. You will knit many short rows for the B stitch to keep it square with the Puff Stitch Check. You actually work 2 extra rows before you start the Puff Stitch Check and 2 extra rows after you've finished it. Here is the pattern for Block P. 2 pages for you to download with all the instructions that you need to make a successful block. 3 new stitches, B stitch, Puff Stitch Check and zigzag chevron. The Puff Stitch Check has an extra stitch on each side to make it the right size for our block. The zigzag chevron has 2 extra stitches on each side to make it the right size for this block. The B stitch, it's just the B stitch, no extras, but it does have short rows. 2 short rows, 2 short rows, 2 short rows. Also, just here, it tells us to work 2 short rows before you start the pattern. The short rows make sure that the length of that pattern is the same as the length of this pattern. When you change from the B stitch and Puff Stitch Check to go to the zigzag chevron, you need to increase quite a few stitches in the first row, which is a purl row. Let's cast on for Block P. Loop the new colour around the old one so you don't get a gap in your cast on edge. We can just adjust that. Nice neat edge. And we need to knit 1 row before we start the 2 patterns, the B stitch and the Puff Check pattern. Every time you change colour, it needs to be looped around the previous colour so we don't get a hole. I'm working on the right side so we keep the yarns to the back of the work, as you normally do on a knit row. After knitting that 1 foundation row right across, we have to do 2 short rows for the B stitch. The first row is just knit. This is because the Puff Stitch Check spreads out so much. We have to have extra rows for the B stitch. Right, let's turn around. And we're going to knit 2, knit below. This is actually row 4 of the B stitch pattern. So knit 1, knit below, knit 1, knit below to the end of the row, and then you're ready to start on the charts at the bottom of this page, at the bottom of page 48. Row 1 for B stitch is just knit. Both B sting and the Puff Stitch Check both start on the wrong side, and this is a wrong side row now while we're knitting. For the B stitch, all wrong side rows are just knit. For the Puff Stitch Check, the pattern is set up on the wrong side row. Now we have 1 extra stitch to start, which is not in the pattern. This is rows 1, 3, 5 and 7. Purl 6. Now we do the double yarn over. 1, 2, then just a knit 1, then 2 more double yarn overs. Purl 5 and continue like that to the last stitch where it's an extra purl stitch. Rows 2, 4, 6 and 8 are all the same. Knit the 1 extra, knit the 6 mentioned in the pattern, Now we purl 5, and as we purl them, it releases that extra wrap around the needle. No extra wrap on the third one. 4, 5, and give a little pull to even them all out. Knit 5 and continue to the end of the row. Row 2 of B-stitch. Knit 1, knit 1 below. In my head I say up, down, up, down, up, down, and so on. I just finished row 2 of bee sting and row 6 of the puff stitch check. This is row 8 of the puff check and row 4 of the bee stitch. The only difference between rows 2 and 4 in the bee stitch is row 2 starts with knit 1, then knit 1 below. Row 4 starts with knit 2, then knit below, then continue on with knit, knit below, up, down. In row 2 it was only knit 1 at the end, of course, but the knit 2 at the beginning gives the offset which creates the pattern. So we'll mark off row 4 of bee stitch and row 8 of the puff check. Now a row 1 for bee stitch is knit. Then I turn and go back and knit row 2 of bee stitch before continuing on with the full bee stitch and puff check on the same row. Row 1, and then I'm going to turn and go back along. Wrap that around. Knit 1, knit 1 below, up, down, right to the end of the row. So I did row 1 of the bee stitch and turned, and I've done row 2. Now we'll be doing row 3 of the bee stitch, which is just knit, but then when we're doing row 9 of the puff check, this is where we change the check when they get offset. I just did row 3 of the bee stitch. Now the puff check, row 9, we're setting up the offset. So we purl 1, the 1 extra stitch, then we purl 1 for the pattern. Now we set up the puffy stitches with the double yarn over. Knit 1, double yarn over, double yarn over, then we purl 5. Now the more puffy stitches, double yarn over, knit 1, double yarn over, purl 5, yarn over, double yarn over. Then the pattern says purl 1, and we purl an extra 1 for the added stitch. That was row 3 of the bee stitch and row 9 of the puff check. Marking off the rows on this little chart is important for 2 reasons. 1, it tells you when to turn and do the extra row so that we keep the length of that work the same as the length of this piece of work. But the other reason is in the bee stitch, rows 2 and 4 are only different in that 1 stitch at the beginning, and if you put your yarn down, your work down, and you come back, it's very hard to tell whether you're up to a row 2 with 1 knit at the beginning of the row, or you're up to a row 4 with 2 knits at the beginning of the row. It's a very small, tight all-over pattern, and by having these here, you can't go wrong. Now I have finished the bee stitch and the puff stitch check. I'm very satisfied with it so far. One purl row in the new colour to get ready for the zigzag chevron. Spread the increases evenly across this row. When it's on top of the B stitch, the increase, just purl into the top of the next stitch, then purl the stitch. Don't try and purl into the top of the stitches where we knitted one below, because that's too thick. Purl into the stitch below and then purl the stitch. Now this is easier on this side. Just spread them evenly. It's about every fourth stitch, but you can count up. Now purling into the top of a knit stitch, purl it. Just purl the back of it, the top at the back there, and then purl the front. Now before we start the zigzag chevron, we knit one row, right to the end of the row. That's the end of the foundation rows. One purl row where you increased, and then one knit row. Now we start the zigzag chevron, and it starts with row 1, purl. In this 8-row pattern, of the 4 return rows, the wrong side rows, 3 of them are purl rows. And that's what I'm doing now. Row 1 is a purl row. The other row, row 5, is a knit row. And it's that row 5 that gives us the little ridge. This is row 2. It is also row 4 and 8. The pattern starts here. I've added a couple of stitches at the beginning and the end of every row to make the block the right size. But the pattern begins here with knit 1, increase 1, and it's a knit into the front and the back of the stitch to increase 1, knit 4, SSK, knit 2 together, knit 4, increase 1 in the next stitch, increase another one by knitting into the front and the back of the stitch. Knit 4, SSK, knit 2 together, knit 4. Then increase 1 in each of the next 2 stitches by knitting into the front and the back of the stitch. Then knit 4, and so on till you get to the end of the row. You can see the peaks and the troughs of this pattern most easily when you look at the ridge. The peaks are made by the increase 1 in each of 2 stitches, and the troughs are made by the SSK and the knit 2 together. The zigzag pulls some of the puff check and the B stitch out of shape to make a nice undulation. And here is block P all ready to cast off. I rather like this combination I've put together with these big blousy stitches here, and then the tight little ones here, and then a lovely flowing wave up here. I think they go well together. I hope you think so too. An added interest to block P is the undulation created by the zigzag chevron stitch, tugging on the B stitch and the puff stitch check. Quite nice. Bye for now.
Hi, I'm Ferg, Daphne's husband. Here are the steps to get your free download of Daphne's Textured Sampler ebook. The first step is send an email to knitwithdaphne@gmail.com and include the subject Free Download. There is no need for any content in the email, and then send the email. You will receive an automatic response to your email that includes the link to access Google Cloud. When you click the link, The Knit with Daphne folder with all the downloadable patterns will open. Double-click the textured sampler blanket to open and download the ebook. Enjoy knitting the textured sampler blanket.